March 15, 1947, 9:23 p.m. The silencer clicked against Lucky Luciano's skull. Cold steel pressed into the base of his head while 6 men with Tommy guns surrounded his table. Across from him, Bumpy Johnson had his own gun problem. 3.45s aimed at his chest from different angles. "Nobody moves," Vincent Torrino whispered, his breath hot against Lucky's ear. "Nobody speaks. One wrong move and this place becomes a morgue." The dining room of Rao's restaurant had gone dead silent. 30 customers, all connected guys from different families, sat frozen with forks halfway to their mouths. The jazz band stopped mid-song. Even the kitchen went quiet. This was supposed to be neutral territory. A peace dinner between Lucky Luciano's organization and Bumpy Johnson's Harlem operation. 2 kings breaking bread to discuss the future of New York crime. Instead, Vincent Torrino's crew had turned it into an execution chamber. But here's what Vincent didn't know. What nobody in that restaurant knew except for 2 men staring at each other across a white tablecloth. This wasn't an ambush. This was exactly what Lucky and Bumpy had been planning for 3 months. To understand how 2 of America's most powerful crime bosses ended up with guns to their heads, you need to understand the war that had been brewing in New York's underworld since Lucky got out of prison. Lucky Luciano had spent 10 years behind bars, and when he walked out in 1946, he found a very different world. The commission he'd built was fracturing. Young Turks like Vincent Torrino were making moves without permission. The old rules, Lucky's rules, were being ignored. Vincent controlled the docks, the numbers, and most importantly, he had political protection that even Lucky couldn't match. Vincent had bought judges, police commissioners, and half the city council. He was untouchable through legal means. But Vincent made one crucial mistake. He thought Lucky had gone soft in prison. Meanwhile, Bumpy Johnson was facing his own problems in Harlem. Vincent's crew was muscling in on his territory, using corrupt cops to shut down his operations while expanding their own. The Italian families had always respected Harlem's independence under the old agreements. But Vincent didn't believe in agreements. Vincent believed in power. Raw, brutal, take what you want power. December 1946. Lucky reached out to Bumpy through intermediaries. Not for an alliance, these men had been competitors for years, but for information. They both had Vincent problems, and Vincent was making enemies faster than he could buy protection. The meeting happened at a barbershop in East Harlem. Just the 2 of them. No bodyguards. No witnesses. "Vincent thinks we're finished," Lucky said quietly while the barber worked around them. "Me because I'm old. You because you're isolated." Bumpy nodded. "He's been telling people the commission is dead, that it's every man for himself now. What do you think?" "I think a man who breaks rules usually breaks them for everybody. Not just his enemies." Lucky smiled for the first time in months. This is why he'd always respected Bumpy. The man understood power politics better than most Italian bosses. "Vincent's got protection," Lucky continued. "Legal protection. We can't touch him through normal channels. So what do you suggest?" "I suggest we let him think he's won." Over the next 3 months, Lucky and Bumpy built their plan. Not just to eliminate Vincent. Any street thug could put a bullet in someone's head. They were going to eliminate him, while making it look like his own people had turned against him. The plan required precision, patience, and most importantly, it required Vincent to believe he was in control. Lucky started by feeding Vincent information. Not directly, through carefully placed intermediaries who thought they were selling out the old boss for money. Information about Lucky's movements, his weaknesses, his desperation to regain power. Bumpy did the same from Harlem, letting Vincent's spies hear conversations about being tired of fighting, about wanting to make a deal, about being ready to surrender territory for peace. Both men played their parts perfectly. Lucky looked like a washed-up ex-con trying to negotiate from weakness. Bumpy appeared to be an aging Harlem king, ready to retire gracefully. Vincent took the bait completely. February 1947. Vincent sent word through back channels. He wanted to meet with both Lucky and Bumpy, together. At Rao's restaurant on March 15th, a neutral venue where they could discuss the new reality of New York crime. The message was clear: submit or die. But Lucky and Bumpy had their own message to send. 2 weeks before the dinner, Lucky's people started making quiet moves. Not obvious ones. Vincent's spies would have noticed obvious moves. Subtle positioning, the kind only a master strategist would think of. Bumpy did the same. His people began showing up in unexpected places, taking jobs that seemed random, unless you understood the bigger picture. March 15, 1947, 6 p.m. The staff of Rao's restaurant reported for their evening shift. Tony the head waiter, Maria the coat check girl, Giuseppe the sommelier, even Sal who cleaned tables, except they weren't the regular staff. Tony was actually Illinois Gordon, one of Bumpy's most trusted lieutenants. Maria was Lucky's cousin Sophia, who could handle a .38 as well as she could hang coats. Giuseppe was French Charlie, who'd been with Lucky since the early days. Every person working in that restaurant that night was either Lucky's or Bumpy's people. The real staff had been given the night off, paid vacation, courtesy of anonymous benefactors. Vincent's protection detail had checked the restaurant twice, swept for bugs, verified that the regular owner would be present. Everything looked normal because Lucky and Bumpy had made sure it looked normal. But when Vincent walked in that night with 12 armed men, he was walking into a trap that had been months in the making. 9:15 p.m. Lucky arrived first, alone as agreed. He chose a corner table, back to the wall, perfect view of the room. Bumpy arrived 10 minutes later, also alone. They sat across from each other like two old lions meeting at a watering hole. For the first few minutes, they actually discussed business. Territory boundaries, tribute percentages, the kind of negotiations Vincent expected to overhear when his people started listening. 9:23 p.m. Vincent made his move. His men rose from tables throughout the restaurant, guns drawn, surrounding the corner booth. Vincent himself approached the table, flanked by his top enforcers. "Gentlemen," Vincent said, settling into a chair uninvited. "I hope you've enjoyed your meal, because it's going to be your last." Lucky and Bumpy exchanged glances. Not the scared glances Vincent was expecting. Something else. Something that should have warned Vincent he'd made a terrible miscalculation. "Vincent," Lucky said calmly, cutting a piece of veal, "you should have stayed in your own neighborhood. This is my neighborhood now. This whole city is my neighborhood. You two old men just haven't figured it out yet." Bumpy leaned back in his chair. "Actually, Vincent, I think you're the one who hasn't figured something out. What's that supposed to mean?" Lucky set down his fork and looked directly at Vincent. "It means you should have counted the waiters." Vincent's face went confused for just a moment, then suspicious, then pale. There were 6 waiters in the dining room. 6 men in white jackets moving quietly between tables, clearing dishes, refilling water glasses, moving into position. Vincent's crew had 12 men total, 6 surrounding the booth, 6 more stationed around the room. They had the numbers, they had the firepower, they controlled the situation, except they didn't control the kitchen, or the bar, or the men in white jackets, or the coat check girl, who was reaching into her booth for something that definitely wasn't a coat. "What the hell?" Vincent started to say. Illinois Gordon, wearing a waiter's uniform, stepped behind Vincent's chair and pressed a sawed-off shotgun against the base of his neck. "Evening, Mr. Torrino," Illinois said politely. "Can I interest you in tonight's special?" Simultaneously, every other staff member in the restaurant drew weapons. Not just pistols, serious hardware. Thompson submachine guns that had been hidden behind the bar. Shotguns that had been concealed in service stations. Enough firepower to turn Rao's into a war zone. Vincent's men found themselves surrounded by people they'd dismissed as harmless restaurant workers. The hunters had become the hunted in less than 10 seconds. "Now Vincent," Lucky continued, as if nothing had happened, "let's talk about the new reality of New York crime." Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket. Illinois pressed the shotgun deeper into his neck. "I wouldn't," Illinois advised. "Mr. Johnson and Mr. Luciano went to a lot of trouble to set this up peaceful-like. Be ashamed to mess up their good tablecloth." Bumpy smiled. "Vincent, you made one critical error. You assumed we were fighting each other. But we haven't been fighting each other," Lucky added. "We've been studying you, learning your patterns, Your weaknesses, your people. You know what we discovered? Vincent's voice came out as a croak. What? Your own crew doesn't trust you. Half the men you brought tonight? They're on our payroll now. Lucky gestured toward Vincent's bodyguards. Tony over there. He's got a sick mother. Medical bills. We're paying those bills now. Marco by the door. He's got gambling debts. Paid those too. Even your driver outside. He's got kids to feed. And we pay better than you do. Vincent looked around the room with growing horror. His men wouldn't meet his eyes. Some were already lowering their weapons. Others backing toward exits that suddenly seemed very far away. This is impossible, Vincent whispered. Bumpy leaned forward. Vincent, you thought you were playing chess with two old men. But we've been playing chess with each other for 20 years. You were just checkers. Lucky pulled out an envelope and placed it on the table. Here's your choice. Inside this envelope are one-way tickets to Miami, cash for a new start, and a list of businesses down there that might be hiring. You take your remaining loyal men, you disappear tonight, and you never come back north of the Mason-Dixon line. And if I refuse? Illinois Gordon's shotgun clicked. Then we discuss option 2. Vincent looked around the room one more time. His empire, his protection, his untouchable status, all of it had evaporated in less than 5 minutes. The corrupt officials he'd bought couldn't help him if there was no evidence of what happened. The judges in his pocket wouldn't matter if he disappeared entirely. How long do I have to decide? Vincent asked. You already decided, Lucky replied. When you walked into our restaurant, Vincent opened the envelope with shaking hands. Plane tickets to Miami. Dated for tonight. Cash, not enough for a fortune, but enough to start over. And a business card for a trucking company in Florida. Your flight leaves LaGuardia in 2 hours. Bumpy said. I suggest you make it. Vincent stood slowly. Illinois stepped back, but kept the shotgun ready. Vincent's remaining men, the ones who weren't already bought, gathered around him uncertainly. This isn't over, Vincent said, trying to salvage some dignity. Lucky wiped his mouth with his napkin and looked up calmly. Vincent, it was over 3 months ago. You just didn't know it yet. Vincent Torrino and his crew walked out of Rao's restaurant at 9:47 p.m. on March 15, 1947. Their plane landed in Miami at 6:30 the next morning. Vincent never returned to New York, eventually built a small trucking business in South Florida, and died peacefully in his sleep in 1963. After the restaurant cleared out, only Lucky and Bumpy remained at their corner table. Illinois Gordon poured them each a glass of wine, real wine, not the restaurant's usual stuff. Not bad for a night's work, Bumpy said, raising his glass. Lucky touched his glass to Bumpy's. Here's to knowing your enemies better than they know themselves. And here's to knowing your friends even better. They drank in comfortable silence for a moment. Two masters of their craft appreciating a well-executed plan. You know what I learned tonight? Lucky asked. What's that? We make a hell of a team when we're not trying to kill each other. Bumpy laughed. Lucky,